What's up, guys? Ryan from Cortex Labs, livecortex.com, here to talk about if zinc is killing your libido, because it actually might be. Or it may be facilitating your libido. There's actually distinctions that are important to make when you're trying to raise testosterone and affect libido as it relates to zinc that I'm going to make in this video. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel. If you are new to the channel, I'm pumping out 3 or 4 or more, sometimes 5 videos per week. Hit the notification box and the bell to get notified of everything that comes out of this channel and my face. Check us out at livecortex.com, where we've got male performance products ranging from nootropics that affect brain performance to testosterone enhancing courses to courses that teach you how to use nootropics to affect brain performance, and a host of other things that we'll talk about at the end of this video. All right, so let's talk about zinc and sex drive and libido. I'll make 2 statements and then I'll sort of explain why this is the case. The first statement I want to make is zinc could definitely be killing your libido, and I will explain why. The other statement I want to make is zinc could be facilitating your libido, and I will explain why. It's all about the dose and a few other variables, and I sort of want to get into that, but I think it's important for us to just sort of break down exactly the role that zinc plays in testosterone and estradiol so that we sort of understand where it could be beneficial and where it could be detrimental as it relates to crashing E2 or estradiol. So number 1, I'm going to read directly from a study called Dietary Zinc Deficiency Alters 5-alpha Reduction and Aromatization of Testosterone and Androgen and Estrogen Receptors in the Rat Liver. Where basically it goes on to say that zinc deficiency reduces LH and thus testosterone and estradiol, which would make sense. So basically what they did was they fed rats a zinc deficient diet, and it ended up lowering concentrations of luteinizing hormone, which is basically the main programmatic chemical, right? The gonadotropin released from GnRH that signals to the testicles to make testosterone. And so as a result of low LH, you're gonna have lower testosterone being produced. And as a result of that, because ultimately estrogen comes from your testosterone, it's aromatized into estrogen, your test is, you'd ultimately end up with lower levels of estradiol. And that's in a zinc deficient diet, right? So ultimately what that means is just androgens, sex hormones in general for a guy, are going to probably be lower if you are consistently in a zinc deficient diet. Okay, so that's one major point to get across. Sex hormones are probably going to be lower the longer you go on a zinc deficient diet. You know, in the study it actually kind of concludes basically the statement that I just said, and it goes, these findings indicate that zinc deficiency reduces circulating luteinizing hormone and testosterone concentrations, alters hepatic, which is liver steroid metabolism, and modifies sex steroid hormone receptor levels, thereby contributing to the pathogenesis of male reproductive dysfunction, which is not great. So you should be getting some degree of zinc, but like this is where I think specificity and nuance matters, because you shouldn't just like take a whole lot of zinc therefore, because like that's just going to directly make more testosterone. This is where people have to be a lot more specific with what they're doing as far as like androgen hacking. And I'll explain the major point, which is essentially that zinc acts as an aromatase inhibitor, which ultimately will prevent some of your testosterone from converting to estrogen. And that seems good for people, right? Like less estrogen, more testosterone, we're stronger in the gym, we have higher sex drive, like that's totally what we want. But again, it gets more nuanced even than that, because that's not always the case. And I want to read from a paper called The Effect of Zinc, Selenium, and Their Combined Supplementation on Androgen Receptor Protein Expression in the Prostate Lobes and Serum Steroid Hormone Concentrations of Wistar Rats, where basically they went on to say that studies on both animals and prostate cell lines have shown that zinc is an inhibitor of 2 key enzymes involved in testosterone metabolism. That is 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone to DHT, and aromatase, which is responsible for the formulation of estradiol from testosterone. So what is that ultimately saying, right? Well, it's saying a couple things. It's saying that higher doses of zinc may be good for you because you will prevent some of the aromatization or the conversion of testosterone to estradiol. So you'll ultimately have lower estrogen. And for some men, that works, and that's good. And if they've been suffering from low sex drive, that is enough, meaning taking enough zinc, and that could be 25 milligrams, could be 50, could be 75. You get in that upward level, you start getting nauseousness as a side effect. But that could be good enough for some men to affect them positively just because you're preventing the aromatization of the testosterone to estradiol. So less estrogen, higher testosterone. In some cases that works out for libido and sex drive. However, I'm not sure if some of you guys caught this, but zinc is also at high doses an inhibitor of 5-alpha reductase, which a lot of chemicals are, like finasteride, which tends to cause sexual side effects in men via its prevention of the conversion of testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, or DHT. So it may be detrimental to your libido via not enough DHT, which is really, it's super potently stronger than actual testosterone when it comes to binding to the androgen receptors. And you may be killing your libido because you are, making it so that testosterone is not 5-alpha reduced into usable, androgen binding DHT, which for some men is going to kill their libido. But switching gears to the estradiol side of things, tanking your serum estrogen, that could kill your libido too. So that's where it gets super confusing, right? And I'll refer you to a Nootropics subreddit post, and then I'll kind of explain, this anecdotal behind it. It goes like this: zinc causes brain fog and anhedonia. And the guy goes like this: I've taken some zinc supplements in small doses, but it seems to cause worse anhedonia and bad brain fog. It just feels like my emotions and brain malfunctions. Anyone have experience or knowledge about this? How long until the brain resets? Now that's just one post and an anecdotal, and who actually knows what this dude had at his regimen or what else may have been going on. However, it could be the case that his testosterone is not being turned into DHT, and he's not making enough estradiol because he's taking zinc, and he's just a sort of a hyper responder to zinc, and as a result he's got low levels of serum estrogen, and that can mess with your mood as a guy. And it estrogen does all kinds of things in your blood. Once it gets into the brain, it sensitizes serotonin receptors, particularly the 5-HT1A receptor. So that's kind of important as it relates to mood, and it's sort of the target for antidepressants pharmacologically, I'll have you know. So there may be something to that. Now, I wanted to just say as an aside, a lot of the PSSD community, so these are people that have sexual dysfunction from taking SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they discuss zinc as a compound that crashes them and takes them out of windows, meaning they may have somewhat recovering sex drive and sexual function, and then they take zinc, and then it removes that recovery period. It takes them out of a positive window, and then they start to have sexual dysfunction again, and they blame zinc, and they want to stay away from zinc. And a lot of them are attributing that to zinc's capacity to partially agonize, I believe, a serotonin receptor that they're very fixated on. It's the 5-HT1A receptor that they believe is responsible for PSSD. I believe that to be a huge mistake, and I do not think the 5-HT1A receptor is as responsible for PSSD or as part of the bigger problem as people think. In fact, I've proven it not to be. But what folks ought to think about is instead it may be the 5-alpha reductase inhibition and the lowering of aromatization, and thus continued lower estradiol, which is markedly bad for men. For most men, lower estradiol is bad, and it's especially bad for men that have PSSD. So anyone that has PSSD that may be watching this, that may be something for you to consider. Start thinking about sex hormones and stop thinking exclusively about neurotransmitters, please, for the life of the community. But I want to, point you to a better example here that kind of really solidifies what I'm trying to tell you guys, and it is the following. It goes, question: TRT level, so TRT, I'm on TRT, I guess he's saying I'm on TRT. Commas, guys, please, commas make a big difference and stuff like this. Guys on TRT, level sitting around 1,200 to 1,300. Now he's talking about his total testosterone in the nanograms per deciliter range. That's high. The range is up to 1,000, 1,100, depending on how you ask. 1,200 to 1,300 is kind of in the supra-physiological ranges, or past the top of the reference range. And taking anastrozole, 0.5, I believe that's 0.5 milligrams every week. Could that be killing my E2 level and causing low libido and irritability? Anyone here with experience in this? Should I just stop taking it, or just lower the dose? Thanks. So anastrozole is an aromatase inhibitor. It's a pharmaceutical aromatase inhibitor, so it's very potent. And there is no question, it's one of those things that you kind of can't stop. You take anastrozole, you're definitely going to lower your estradiol, and that again isn't always good. And so it's quite possible that that was the reason that this person's libido was tanked. Zinc has a great ability in high doses, again, remember, to do the same thing by inhibiting aromatase and preventing you from actually having adequate levels of estradiol. So if you look at the comments here on this guy's post, you got a guy going, yes and yes, did the same thing myself. E2 was at 9. That was the end of that. Dude, I couldn't imagine what that dude's sex drive is like. I can tell you honestly, like I've taken actual aromatase inhibitors as an experiment because I'm a biohacker. I've high dose zinc, I've high dose DIM. I've crashed my estrogen, and it always crashes my dick. It makes my libido basically non-existent. I am not interested in sex whatsoever when my E2 is below like 20 or so, and we're talking about picograms per milliliter. And so for me personally, no question, crashing my estradiol makes my junk stop working. Someone goes, and then I think the original OP goes, thanks. Did you end up just taking less or removing the AI altogether, which is the aromatase inhibitor? How long after did you start feeling normal? And what he's really asking is how long after removing the AI did your estradiol levels recover and go back to somewhat normal levels? And this is an important question because it's not immediate. Sometimes estradiol raising back to normal levels and you getting your libido back when you've crashed it too low can actually take a really long time. And we're talking about weeks to months. I've seen this happen before. And the guy goes, yes, I did stop completely, a week and a half. So that's a pretty good timeline to come back to normal on estradiol. Hardest thing was to ignore weird feelings and not blame it on that. Let's see, any other relevant comments? I think there actually is. My estrogen was in the cellar at 0.7 milligrams of anastrozole. I felt rough, man. E2 was under 5. Been off of it for 3 weeks now. I feel like my sex drive is the only thing that hasn't recovered at this point. So probably some of the emotional aspects of having low E2 have recovered. Like you're in a shitty mood, you do not feel good, your joints hurt, you generally kind of feel like just like a piece of crap walking. I wonder if there's a walk for that. The crap walk is that the crap walk? And this happens. Okay, so let me just kind of back up and give my assessment for folks. What I would say is that zinc can be extremely useful for you to facilitate libido so long as it's taken in a controlled manner. Okay, so don't be, in other words, don't be zinc deficient, and you should have relatively normal libido so long as no other things are causing you to have some sort of disturbance in your libido. If you are not conscious of getting enough zinc, you will ultimately end up over a longer period of time having less luteinizing hormone, which is going to make you make less testosterone and estradiol, and that is not good for your sex hormones or your libido. So aside from that, though, one should consider that zinc is it's a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor at large doses, and it's also an inhibitor of aromatase. So that could be good for some people that, their estradiol, as an example, is super high, and that's causing them to have dick problems, because that'll totally cause you to have libido issues, like your whole sexual function could be terrible with high estradiol, right, super high above the reference range. So you've got to be careful there. Like that may be useful for a person in that particular situation, kind of maybe taking their zinc dose in a supplement, a bioavailable one, perhaps higher, or just starting to take one, and that may help lower your estradiol. In fact, it almost guaranteed will lower estradiol because it's preventing that testosterone from being aromatized into estradiol. And maybe it's not preventing the 5-alpha reduction of testosterone DHT in such a significant manner for your particular physiology that you end up being okay and not losing sex drive because of the low DHT. But on the other side of the coin, like this is what's so fascinating about certain compounds, especially as it relates to test, is that this one compound can crash you or it could make things really great as it relates to your libido. Because if you dose too high on a zinc supplement and you end up, because you're inhibiting 5-alpha reductase and you're not therefore having enough DHT, that's like a super sex drive androgen, and you're preventing testosterone's aromatization or conversion to estradiol, so you end up having a lot less estradiol, that could kill your libido too. If you're on TRT, it really doesn't matter as it relates to LH, because again, you're not making LH anyway. You're relying on the exogenous chemical to, have your serum testosterones be where they are. And really, with someone that's on TRT, the use for zinc would be as a mild AI. So zinc could contribute to lowering estradiol if it's too high and you think that that could potentially be fussing with your sex drive. Again, as I said, on the other side of the spectrum, if you're a dude with super high estradiol and you've confirmed this by your E2 numbers on blood work, like you don't want to be guessing at this stuff especially. It's like super high and you need to lower it, you may want to consider a higher dosing as a bioavailable zinc supplement because that's going to prevent the aromatization of testosterone to estradiol and ultimately is going to probably lower your estradiol. It sort of functions as a natural AI, just not as quickly and not as potently, but may even be better as an AI for certain people. And I guess lastly, I would say if you're testosterone hacking, right? You're hacking your androgens and you're running a natural protocol, or you're running HCG, or even if you're running TRT, right? And your doc is probably not like going to monitor you at this level. I mean, they're very kind of cookie cutter, most of them, unless you get a good telemedicine clinic or something. Then you just want to be conscious of zinc and how it relates to libido and estradiol, and you've got to know whether or not, and you can only understand this through looking at lab work and then determining what your subjective experience is. You've got to know whether or not high estradiol is helpful to your libido and your junk and your erection quality, or if lower estradiol is positively contributing to better libido. And it seems to be different for different men, but there are some kind of continuous, similar, kind of guaranteed patterns across the board, which is way too high estradiol is going to crash your dick and your libido, and then way too low estradiol is going to do the same thing. So generally, you probably want that. Again, it's hard to give a cookie cutter statement, but just not too low and not too high. What you should really do, so if you're thinking about maybe either going on TRT or trying to do some sort of natural approach to raising tests, and to my knowledge, there are some natural, highly effective natty protocols, kind of natural protocols to raise testosterone. Now it's slower and you're not going to get the straight shot of rapidly raising tests as you would going on TRT or whatever. Then you should just watch the testosterone superclass, because that course teaches you pretty much everything. So if you want to approach it extremely naturally, there is a very complex protocol for you to do that, which is highly effective for myself, clients, pretty much everyone that goes on it that doesn't have like massive issues with Lytic cells or gonadotropin release. There are protocols in there that are more advanced than just a complex natural supplement protocol, meaning chemicals that will agonize the LH-FSH combo receptors, in the Sertoli cells and the Lytic cells in the testicles, and make you pump out your own endogenous tests. So there's hacks for that in there. There's androgen receptor maintenance and androgen receptor upregulation protocols in the testosterone superclass, and then there is also essentially, the question of whether or not you should go on TRT. Like at what point after you've tried this protocol, that protocol, and that protocol, or this and this to raise tests, and you really gotten marginal results, at what point should you just make the commitment and go on TRT? You can have all those questions answered in the testosterone superclass. It'll be the best, like 70, 57 bucks. I don't even know. It's pretty cheap right now that you've ever spent if you're trying to raise tests and understand what it is you're doing and having good protocol. So do that at livecortex.com. For those of you that are hard charging individuals that like to achieve things, which I'm pretty sure is most of you, I built a nootropic stack called Cortex, and that thing is powerful. We're talking about motivation, mental energy, verbal fluency, the will to do work, like that motivated alpha energy to like get stuff done and constantly be hard charging in your life. Like it's a great feeling. Like it's a totally different feeling if you're coming from a place where you're not really functioning all that great. Cortex delivers, man. Go buy a bottle of that stuff at livecortex.com. All clinically validated, scientifically proven chemicals like uridine, CDP, choline, artichoke extract, bacopa, and there that are contributing to things like neurogenesis, the elevation of noradrenaline, the sensitization of dopamine receptors, the branching of axons and dendrites. Hosts of really effective things going on when you take the Cortex nootropic stack. Best way to get it would be on auto ship. Have it shipped to your doorstep every 30 days. The best cycle strategy for Cortex is 4 days on, 3 days off. You could run it 5 days on, 2 days off, but cycling, you cycle nootropics in the interest of preventing tolerance. And if you need my help on any of this stuff, whether it's related to testosterone or it's designing your nootropic regimen or trying to figure out like what's wrong with your brain chemistry, what's wrong with your energy, what is wrong with your libido and hormonal function, just book a call with me and we'll figure it out. You know, you can do a 25-minute call with me, an hour call with me, an hour call plus a regimen formulation. We can do ongoing work, and I also do consulting for men that have come off SSRIs and have sexual dysfunction, otherwise known as PSSD. You know, experts are sort of a black box of mystery information that you don't have because they've been studying the field, you know, that's relative to your condition for 10 or 15 years or whatever. I mean, the 10,000 hour rule totally applies in some of these situations. So I usually can look at someone's complex problem and within a short period of time identify exactly what's happening and then put together a plan for you to move forward to resolve it or optimize whatever area you're trying to optimize. So go book with me if you need to, livecortex.com. Thank you so much for being with me. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell to get notified of everything we do because I'm pumping out all kinds of content these days. All kinds. It's been wonderful chatting with you. So much more content to come soon, and I'll talk to you next time.